Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So on the agenda tonight we have Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and this is going to be coming from 2003 and they're going to be playing Through Melinda. So let's get them up on screen and see how they get on.
When I get $400, I'm off to see Melinda. Yeah, when I get $400, I'm going to see Melinda. And I just don't care if you're going with me, 'cause I'm getting up in the morning and I'm off to see Melinda. I'm off. And I would give the morning sun just to see Melinda. The earth and all the sky to be there with Melinda. And I just don't care what you got to say, 'cause I'm getting up in the morning and I'm going to see Melinda. I'm through with Clay County. They never did a thing for me. Yet I'm through with Clay County. They never did a thing for me. Yes, and one dark night I'm gonna crawl through a window. Yes, I'm getting up this morning and I'm off to see Melinda. Yeah, I'm off.
I'm just going to jump in here because, of course, with this video, I was asked to look at Mike Campbell's guitar playing, but I'm probably going to spend a little bit of time just talking about Tom as well, because I haven't actually done an analysis video on Tom yet. But looking at Mike, of course, Tom is supplying that rhythm work on the acoustic guitar, so it gives Mike that license to just throw in little lines here or there, just little lead parts as well. You'll find them just coming in and out of the mix, and that's what Mike does. He's got such great expressive playing, but he never overplays, and he always appreciates when the notes have to be played, but also when they don't have to be played. Sometimes the most important thing is to let a track breathe, and this is a great example of that, because the mix we've got going on here, so much headroom, it's so clear, we can hear everything perfectly. Another thing Mike's doing is he's throwing in a lot of work on that Bigsby, and the Bigsby is the first version of what we call a whammy bar now, and the way that he throws it in there, he's really changing up the frequency with which he's throwing in that vibrato. So he's getting each note to sing, and he's not only doing it on his lead notes, but he's also doing it on chord shapes as well. But it is such a great tone for this performance. Sometimes you'll find some guitarists that just overdo the effects, whereas it's absolutely spot on here from Mike. It's just so atmospheric, suiting the sound of the track and the composition. And that's something that Mike does Full stop. You know, he will do that for every track. He'll never overplay. These guys absolutely bounce off each other live, and it's great to see because they've all got an appreciation, and you'll see that in this performance, all looking around and making eye contact, these little cues that they all give each other because they're all just reacting to each other's playing. And from that appreciation of the composition, you can tell that Mike is going to be a great composer as well. And one that stands out for me is The Boys of Summer by Don Henley as a big hit for him, but that was co-written with Mike, and Mike also played on that as well. Mike has been with Tom since the days that they were called Mudcrutch, because he met Tom actually through Randall Marsh, who was auditioning to play drums for Tom's band, and Randall heard that Tom had just lost his guitarist, and Randall knew Mike, so Mike came along, did an audition, and Tom really liked the way that Mike played. So in the early 70s, they were actually quite popular in Florida, and by 1974 they then signed a deal, but they just released one single and it didn't do very well, so they split up soon after. Let's get back to the video because Benmont Tench is about to melt our face on the piano. I'm just going to jump in here where the crowd are just clapping and getting into this because it must have been so good to have been there to hear that dynamic change in the flesh. You're probably looking out for it, having watched a lot of my videos, the way that we went to that all-out sound, into that piano solo, and then when we came out of that, we just totally dropped down so that now that piano really is taking center stage. You could see that Tom is hardly strumming that guitar at all. Such great appreciation for those dynamics. And I feel like at this point I've just got to mention about Tom Petty just as an artist, because this guy sold over 80 million records worldwide, which is just a crazy number, but that's why he is one of the biggest selling artists of all time. Tom's fire was first lit when he actually met Elvis, because his uncle was working on a film that Elvis was in, and then he saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that's what made him want to be in a band. And I don't think he excelled at sports at school, so he gravitated towards music and actually left school at 17 and set up his first band playing bass. And it wasn't an easy ride for Tom, because because especially with his dad, I don't think his dad was into that whole artistic side of music or just of life in general, but he was very much closer, Tom, with his mum and his brother than he was with his father. But then Tom started to get lessons from no other than Don Felder. So what a teacher to have. Of course, Don then went on to join the Eagles. And it's interesting, their debut album, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, didn't do that well over in the USA. It wasn't until they came to Britain that they started to make some impressive sales of that album. In 1977, the single Breakdown, which was a re-release, that actually peaked at number 40 in the charts. Early 1978, they actually toured in the UK with Niels Lofgren, and after that tour, their single, which they released called Breakdown, that's actually a re-release of that peaked at number 40 in the charts. In 1978, they released their second album, but it was the third album in 1979 called Damn the Torpedoes. That was the album that just went stratospheric in terms of it sold over 2 million copies. It went platinum really quickly. The fourth album in 1981, that was called Hard Promises, and that went platinum as well, and it also spawned the hit single called The Waiting. In 1982, for the fifth album, Ron Blair, the bassist, actually left the band, so they brought in Howie Epstein. And there's a funny story about this because Tom was actually recording his friend or producing his friend's material. He's called Del Shannon, and Howie was playing for Del. But Tom, because he was in the studio, of course he got to hear Howie play, but he got to hear Howie sing as well. And Tom said that he'd always wanted a singer like Howie who could do these really high, strong backing vocals. So he had to he didn't have to, but he stole his friend Del's bassist and backing singer. And it's funny because I saw an interview with Tom, and Tom said that Del eventually forgave him for that, but it was one of those situations where Tom saw this guy and absolutely had to have him because he was that good. And it just so worked out that Howie, it was just one of those bands that he would love to play bass for and sing for, Tom Petty. So it just worked out really well, but not so well for Del. I don't want this video to go on for too long, but there is so much that Tom Petty did and achieved. In 1988, he was with the Travelling Wilburys. But then also, another little fact I want to mention is that in 2014, Hypnotic Eye, which was actually their 13th album, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, that went to number 1. So that was the most successful album that they ever had. And it's interesting that it was 2014 because something that happened with Tom, I think he improved the older he got. Certainly in the early days, vocally, he's always had that expression and that ability to tell a story so well. But the older he got, the better he was, certainly pitch-wise, in my opinion, vocally, but he never lost that expression. But it just goes to show that by 2014, they're still producing great music, great songs, and Tom still has that ability to communicate with audience en masse. But Mike Campbell, what a tasteful guitar player he is, and he was perfect for Tom and the way that Tom wrote, because Mike would never overplay and always play what the track needed. But just finally finishing with Tom Petty, one of the biggest selling artists of all time. What a huge loss to music it was when he left us. But check out Tom's stuff. As I said, I haven't got time to go over all of it because he's just achieved so much in his lifetime, but just go and check out Tom Petty's music. It is well worth your time. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!